Hello viewers, this is your host Nane Kuya here. So today's guest, a very amazing person with amazing story. So he is the multicultural ambassador for Greater Brisbane, Queensland, and he's currently the board member of the Refugee Council. So proud to coming to Australia, he lived in a refugee camp after escaping the civil war in Liberia in 1990. As a teenager, he took care of his 5 siblings in refugee camps in Guinea. Having experienced the hardship of a displaced person, he took it upon himself to support refugees and people who are in a refugee-like situation by pursuing a career in teaching with the International Rescue Committee for Liberian and Sierra Leonean refugees, where he taught for 4 years. So he resettled in Australia in 2003 along with his 5 siblings. As determined as he is, he furthered his education and he became the first former Liberia refugee to graduate with Masters of Development Practice with specialization in community development degree from the University of Queensland. He has worked as a community development coordinator at Brisbane City Council, a senior community development officer at the Multicultural Development Association. And because this man is very committed to his community, he is the past president of the Federation of Liberia Communities in Australia, and he's the founding member of the past president of the Queensland African Community Council. He is also the founding member and the president of the Liberian Association of Queensland. Viewers, let's welcome Mr. Bobby Whitfield.
Hey, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to be in Yakuza studio. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Nice seeing you here, Bobby. People would like to know who Bobby Whitfield is. So, who is Bobby Whitfield?
Oh, thank you very much, Nana Kuya, for having me in Yakuza studio.
You're
My
welcome.
name is Bobby Whitfield, like you rightly said, and it's a pleasure, to sit and chat with you. I'm from a very tiny country on the continent of Africa. Very tiny, but a small country to compare with its neighboring countries. I'm from Liberia, to be specific, a very historical country that championed the cause of freedom, independence on the continent of Africa. And as a boy growing up in Liberia, everything was really great and wonderful. I was born into the union of Mr. and Mrs. Whitfield, grew up in a very vibrant community, a mining community called Lamco Yukepa, and went to school, started my education there, of course, and that came to an abrupt end in 1989 when the war broke up, and it broke up just right in that part of the country, Nimba County, and I had to flee from, my country, Liberia, my beautiful, wonderful, sweet country, Liberia, to live as refugee in Guinea. So that's Bobby in a nutshell, and it's just great to be here today, to have this chat.
Thank you, Bobby. So you are the Multicultural Ambassador and also the board member of the Refugee Council of Australia. Can you tell us your roles and your responsibilities as an ambassador?
The Multicultural Ambassador, initially known as Queensland Cultural Diversity Ambassador, is an award, a very prestigious award. In fact, the very first time it was introduced was in 2013, and I was one of the first recipients of that award. It's a very prestigious award that recognizes a sustained commitment of an individual, service to the community in promoting harmonious community, in promoting multiculturalism, and that recognition really highlights some of the work that I've done within, our Greater Brisbane over the years, and it was just an honor to be recognized at such level. I think you don't really work for recognition, but sometimes when you are recognized and you don't expect it, it's just really overwhelming. And today, I one of those multicultural ambassador of this great state of Queensland. And like you also alluded to, I'm a board member of the Refugee Council of Australia. Like the Refugee Council of Australia is the peak body of refugee, organizations and individuals from refugee backgrounds and even individuals who are working with refugees across this great country, Australia. And I became a board member since 2008. I was elected to the board, and the board really, we advise the federal government of Australia on refugee issue globally. We advocate, for refugee issues globally. It's not just restricted to Australia. It is that Australia voice of refugee globally, internationally. And we've got a very dynamic board. We've got professors, lawyers, and people from so many diverse backgrounds serving on this board. We got our head office in Sydney, our CEO, Mr. Paul Power. We've got other board members, president, Phil, and some great board members who are there. But my role on that board is to really, I have lived the refugee experience. So it's part of, bringing in somebody on the board who have actually had the refugee experience to be able to, diversify the views of the Refugee Council and how we go about advocating and how, our positions reflect, refugee issues.
Bobby, tell us a bit about your educational background.
Oh, wonderful. Like I said, I started my education in Liberia. A beautiful community, and it's a community that will always stick in my head. The parents wanted you to grow up and become one of the best, in
every
your
African
community.
parent.
Exactly. So they made sure to send us to the best schools in the country. I went to some of the best elementary schools, like Irasi School. After the elementary school, my junior high school, I got, articulated or accepted in a Catholic school called the Carroll High School. And that was, in fact, if not mistaken, the best school in the entire country at the time, Carroll High School, with few other schools in Monrovia, and those are Catholic schools, and got a very solid, upbringing educationally. And then the war, at senior high level, the war broke up and we had to flee Liberia into Guinea. So I completed my high school in Guinea in a refugee camp environment after fleeing. I know we're going to come to the refugee experience, but I also had to do with the education experience too. So I actually completed high school in a refugee camp. And after completion of high school, the Lola Refugee School, I was asked to stay on and teach. So I started my professional, journey as well in the refugee camp. So my first job became as a teacher and got a teaching B certificate. So it was pretty much on the job training, teaching and training to be a teacher, And at the end of it, I moved from the refugee camp environment into the capital, Conakry, where I ended up teaching English as a second language in the university there before being very, very fortunate, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart, to be resettled with my siblings here in Australia. And we have just grabbed the opportunity this great country have got to offer with our both hands, and we want to make the most of it. We want to contribute to this great land. We want to add, to the vibrancy, the diversity of this great country. So everything we can do, the focus is about how we give back to Australia that have given back to us so much. So to do that, you have to be prepared.
Yep.
It comes to the question of education. So I got a job, started a family, but I still wanted to further my education. So I went to, got into the master program at the University of Queensland, where I graduated with Master of Development Practice degree, that is the MDP, with specialization in community development.
Oh, okay. So even your educational background is geared on in serving people. Why did you choose to become a humanitarian?
Look, I dedicated my life pretty much to serving people from the refugee experience.
Yeah, because of your experience?
Yeah, exactly. Living through refugee camps is not an easy journey, especially in Africa, in some of the worst places on earth. I'm not saying it in a condescending way, but in a way to really bring out the true picture of where we have to live, as refugee. There were no services, no hospitals, no running water, no tap water, We had to really scoop water from the ditches, just to drink. You have got to sometimes go without food for weeks, and you just got to make do with whatever wild
Are you
fruit.
talking about the refugee
camp? You know, the refugee
Okay.
camp situation. So living in such an environment and having to share a sleeping place with, you know, goats and sheep and, you know, the cattle in a community, it was just deplorable. And slowly, you know, the humanitarian services started to come in and gave us some support. We started to dig wells and build schools, and it was all about, you know, service. So service has been part of my DNA. My parents have always told me, Bobby, good never lost. That's my mom, you know, saying. In life, it's good to be important, but it's always important to be, you know, good, you know. And once you are very generous, very serviceable, you found the greatest joy.
Yeah,
So that, you know,
you can even go far.
exactly. And so that commitment didn't start here. It's something that I started with in the refugee camp. And to just add to that, I got separated from my parents during the war. We were separated. You know, I ended up in a refugee camp with my siblings. And being the older son, you know, you have got to actually assume the added responsibility. Our African culture, if you left the house, your older boy going to be, you know, in charge. So that sense of service, that sense of duty is just part of me. You know, sometimes I get really amazed of some of the things that I do. Sometimes I don't talk about these things, but sometimes it's at the detriment of my own family. You know, and I wonder, oh, that decision, was it really wise? To not take your kid up for the swimming, or to not be with your wife at this function, and you are here, you know, feeling informed, you are talking about, you know, community programs on the weekend. But at the end of the day, if that is what brings joy, and my family have really come along to support me, nothing going to stop that.
Yeah, one of my motivations for starting up A2A Talk Show is to provide positive information about Africa, which sometimes, you know, missing in the mainstream media. So most people associate Liberia with war, poverty, Ebola. You know, so in your opinion, just give us a brief introduction of Liberia and some of the good things happening post-war and the Ebola issue.
Like you know, said, sometimes people associate Liberia with violence, with war, you know, disease, Ebola. But I grew up in a great country, and Liberia is still one of the, you know, best places in the world. You know, you wouldn't exchange your homeland with anything. It's where you were born, where you grew up. It's the culture, you know, the indigenous epistemology, that knowledge of the environment. You know, and growing up in Liberia, it was just wonderful. We never experienced anything of violence until the war actually broke up. And we had no idea why they were even, you know, at war in the first place. But others felt that it was, you know, necessary to have war. But for me, it was never necessary. I was a child growing up and going to the best schools, and, you know. So Liberia was really great.
Yeah, war is not necessary anywhere.
It never at all. It would never ever be necessary anywhere. But look, we are just to come to some of the negativity associated. Sometimes it comes out of ignorance. You know, people are a human being first. They are not diseases. You know, to call, you know, Ebola, and you look at a whole group of people and stereotype them or stigmatize them, it's just really wrong. You know, there are some great, you know, things coming out of Liberia. Liberia produced two Nobel Peace Prize winners, you know, the President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and Lehman Bowie in 2011.
Talk about her.
Liberia produced one of the world's best footballers at the time, you know, George Weah. You know, Liberia, you know, was one of the leading exporter of iron ore in the world. Liberia was also, you know, boast of the largest rubber plantation in the world. You know, it's a great country, beautiful future, beautiful people. Some of the most hospitable people you can think about. You know, it's Liberia. Oh, the culture, man. No matter how long I stay away from Liberia, I am always glued to the culture. The food. The food is that connection between, you know, Australia and my home country, Liberia. And I want to say to Australians or those who listen to this interview, look, if you go in on your safari, fair enough, you know, go and see the animals in East Africa. If you want to enjoy culture and food, go to the West Coast. You're going to enjoy culture and food and the colors, you know, in Liberia, Ghana, Guinea, Sierra Leone, just vibrant. So I wanted to use this to tell all of my colleagues out there. But it's a wonderful country. It's a great country. And look, the Ebola was a very, very sad moment in the history of Liberia. They have never had any such experience before. It could have broken up anywhere. It was not like, you know, it was destined to be Liberia. It
just happened.
Yeah, it just happened, you know. And those three countries, I mean, it was terrible. Sitting in Australia and watching your people literally die in the streets, you know. The trauma, you know. And remember, we are from a war-torn, you know, background. And just watching the thing being displayed on the media and international media and seeing the slow response. It took really good time before the world came along to say, no, we got to save lives, you know. But we didn't sit there. We felt really shocked by that, and we stood in solidarity with our people. And Australia being a very unique country in the diaspora, gave us the urge to actually go out there and raise awareness of what was happening back home. And the wonderful people of Australia joined the campaign, the Sierra Leoneans, the Liberians, you know, communities, the Africans, you know, across the country were all speaking about Ebola and talking in their own area, in their own workplaces, at their schools, in their community, organizing rallies and, you know, lobbying their governments. It was just really great effort, you know, that brought the attention of the Australian government to finally join the fight against Ebola, and a year over 44 million, you know, in funding to go towards the fight against Ebola. And that was just really great response. And today we've got pretty much an Ebola-free environment. But over 10,000 people have died across the three countries, and it's wonderful that, you know, we are able to move on and don't continue to say, oh, he's from Liberia, she's from, you know, Sierra Leone, they are Ebola, they are, no, it's just being naive, it's just being, you know, narrow-minded, and just being, you are just stigmatizing and sometimes stereotyping a group of people who have got great things to offer this wonderful country.
Oh, okay. Well, those people who didn't make it, all we can say is may their soul rest in perfect peace. Yeah. Bobby, I want to know, and I think the whole Australia or the whole world also want to know, we will just want you to tell viewers your journey from Liberia to Australia.
Yeah, it was a very tough journey, very daunting prospect. I would never want that to be repeated. As long as I live, I don't want any other human being to experience it. But sadly, we see on our TV screen the Syrian refugees, you know, are fleeing in the numbers, and people are still debating whether we should, you know, be hospitable to them or we should be mean to them. That was a similar situation that happened over, you know, 20 plus years ago in 1989 when the war broke up, you know. Living in a very peaceful, relatively productive community, and for everything to be brought to an abrupt end by, you know, war, is just something you don't want to experience anymore. And nobody wakes up in the morning and say, oh, today I'm going to be a refugee. You know, I don't see that. You are born in a community, you grow up in a community, you want to be the next teacher, the next doctor, the next engineer, the next lawyer. You know, you want to make your parents proud. You want to continue that, you know, dynasty of your parents, or the Whitfield. We got Whitfield who's now a lawyer. You know, you want to be part of that community, part of the development of that community. But something happened, and you are forced to flee. And once you flee from your country to another country, your country can no longer provide protection, and you are in another country, you take on a new labor refugee. And that's how we had to run. Literally, we had to run for the life we live. It's like we are all here about our normal business, and all of a sudden, people start shooting from, you know, the end of this community. And we're all just going to run where they are not shooting. And in that process, you know, you are not going to run with the television or the cameras or the, you know, you're just going to run to a safe place. And that's how, you know, people fled my community, Yikipa, at the time. And within a couple of hours, there were over 75,000 refugees that have crossed the border. And remember, there are not services that are waiting for you there. There are not infrastructures that are waiting for you there. There are no food that are waiting for you there. So in the next 4 hours after you should have arrived to that safe place, then you start to drink better water, you know. Or privacy of individual is no longer respected because everybody going to use the same creek. You know, you got to take bath in the same dead water, you know. It's terrible, you know. At night, other refugees take advantage of the young ones, you know, the females are being raped. You know, refugee camp is not that ideal environment anybody want to be in, you know. You don't want to live there. It's terrible. You don't have access to electricity, no medication. Women are screaming at night because they're being raped, even broad day, you know, they're being raped. And children are dying of preventable and curable diseases, cholera, diarrhea, you name the rest. Mosquito bites can cause huge, you know, setback. And that was how we had to, you know, live for the first few years as refugee in the remotest part of Guinea, and slowly we progressed by building refugee schools, and you know, move on from refugee school, and I went to the capital along with my siblings who were very wonderful, very hardworking individuals too. And we stayed in the capital, and we got the opportunity, started to get exposure to technology and the internet, you know. So it was through that experience we came across the Australian humanitarian forums at the internet, you know, cafe, the internet area. So we have to pay to use their internet, you know, it's a pay service. And while using it, people were talking about, oh, resettlement and that. But that was not part of the reason, you know. We had no knowledge of resettlement. We didn't go into refugee camp because we wanted opportunity to come to Australia. No, I had no knowledge of Australia until, you know, I was told, okay, your application has been accepted. So the idea that people flee their country and go only because they want to take opportunity or advantage of opportunity of developed country is just really, you know, not true for every refugee situation. Our situation was a pure, you know, refugee situation. You know, when I say a pure refugee situation, people don't go to the refugee camps, or the UNHCR don't go to the refugee camps. Oh, you know, we're going to send you over to America, you stay here. No. There are not that many places. And coming here, working on the board of the Refugee Council, you have really, you know, opened me up and broadened my knowledge in this field. To know that over, you know, 50 million refugees, the war can only settle about, you know, 1 million at a time. I mean, 1 million is still too high, you know. So not all of the refugees will get resettlement. So the UN don't go into the refugee camps and say, we will give you resettlement, you know. There are solutions to the refugee issue we call local integration, where they help you to get locally integrated in that community. Sometimes they come about based on marriage, intermarriage, you know, or business loan, or get an employment. And sometimes when the refugee situation, the situation that have caused the refugee to flee in the first place have subsided back home and there is peace, they encourage people to go back. They call that a repatriation. Or if the situation still prevail back home and refugees are not, you know, settling peacefully in their new place in the refugee environment, then come this, you know, resettlement.
Bobby, when you got into the country here, how were you able to live above the negative tags of being a refugee?
Like I said, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me after having gone through the process and applied for, you know, a resettlement.
Because me coming here as a migrant, right? I'm tagged sometimes, I think, you know, because of your color and where you come from. So you being a refugee, how were you able to, you know, go through that?
Yeah, and that's what I'm coming to. Like, I said the greatest thing happened to me was coming to this country from the refugee camp. And sometimes people think that, oh, you are no longer in a refugee camp now, you are now in a developed economy, you got everything advanced, country, everything is okay. No, there are huge challenges. And like one of those things that you are speaking about, or stereotypes and stigmatization, But sometimes I look beyond that. You see, I tend to really look beyond that. I don't live by what you ascribe to me, by the little box you put me in. I got vision.
There are some people in the community
who
are going through.
Yeah.
What I asked
exactly.
you. So from what you are saying, I think they will listen to you and also try. And
exactly, and that's the message I want to get across to a lot of my community members who sometimes feel that they have to live according to how they are being called or how they are being labeled. I've seen people without limbs, arms and legs, and they do wonderful things. They are not living by that condition. They tend to live above it. And don't get me wrong, I don't support people being labeled in those kind of a negative ways. But we all got to also understand that you just got to name a situation, you got to name an event. And in so doing, there is no other way to say it. You're a refugee. You fled your country, and that's the word ascribed to somebody, If it's being used connotatively or denotatively to portray something positive, like for example, when the flood came to Brisbane, the Brisbane floods, and people from refugee background got in the streets, and we joined the rest of the community to clean up. The media reporter came and said, these young, energetic, from war-torn background refugees, came in when the call went out and they supported. Nobody questioned the media why they use refugee. Because it was saying something positive for people who have come here as refugees, contributing. But then, people get really angry when it's used negatively, which sometimes I tell you, let us have a balance here, We got to name a situation. The terrible incident where, happened in our community. So, the refugee came and starved, they are refugees killing each other. And that was on social media. It's being used in a very negative way. And that is wrong. That is really wrong, because then you really demonize a group of people. Refugee does not mean that, they have no other life. These are people who come from very professional backgrounds. Some of them are medical doctors. Some of them are, you name the rest. And they have come to this country to contribute. But because they have come through this process, we name them refugee. But at a certain point in time, like somebody like myself, who's been in this country going to almost 15 years now, you still call me refugee and I just smile at you, I know you don't really know me, you don't know what I have done, and it is nothing to be really angry about, but I just tell my community member, that's something you cannot define yourself by. You cannot keep getting angry because somebody referred to you as refugee. I mean, we got to call a spade a spade. You come here as a migrant from a migrant background, you come here as a migrant. You come here from a refugee background, you come here as a refugee. Even though you may have a straight citizenship, it is not okay to just celebrate when you say something good and positive about, people from that background. But then when the negative come out, you got to address it. You got to say, not all refugees are here, and starving is not just, somebody dying in a community is not just, ascribed to only one community. It happens all over the country, people from all walks of life. Accident happen, so it is not just refugees that get involved into killing. So look, what I tell my community out there is, you are who you are a human being first, you come from a background, you cannot, discount it. And those are the experiences, that make you who you are. If I just woke up and I said today I don't want to be called Liberian or I don't want to be called a refugee, I don't want these things to be associated with me, I have really done myself injustice, because I come from a background that is unique. I come from an experience that is unique. If we can relate on a lot of issues, but then when it comes to that, living the refugee journey, going to bed without food for over 2-3 weeks, and not knowing where your next meal is coming from, that's an experience that is unique with that individual. So you cannot just discount it. But equally so, people cannot use it as a way of putting other people down. You know, the person you are calling refugee may be a supervisor at a job. The person you are calling refugee may be somebody sitting on the government, table advising ministers and premiers. The person you are referring to as just a refugee is, contributing to this community. They are working, they are paying taxes, they are, contributing to economic activity. So why not forget about this thing and just say, get along?
Let's move on from here. Yeah. So you are a community leader, okay, and you are also the refugee ambassador. We would like to know if Australia government is providing enough to help refugees settle in the country.
Yes. The refugee program in Australia is second to none in the world. I would say this at the drop of a hat. I have lived it and I have gone through it. Australia have got a great history of welcoming people from all walks of life. It's not a pick and choose situation. If the refugee program is just implemented according to what it is, it's just really great. You come to this country as a refugee under the humanitarian visa, you have got a service provider waiting for you. Remember I told you about my experience fleeing from Liberia into Guinea? There was no service provider at the, across the border. We had to actually jump in the forest and find our own food. We had to, go to the creek and do our own thing. And here you have got a service provider waiting for you at the airport, take you to your accommodation, pick you up the next day, open a bank account, the government welfare system is there, and everything you need to do to be comfortable in your new country.
So they are providing it.
Are there to provide it. Yeah. You want to hear about these ugly refugee treatment based on politicians trying to politicize the misery of other people. Okay. Australia have got capacity. Australia shouldn't be sourcing or outsourcing the refugee situation to a third country. It just makes our country, and it really damn our, great history of this country to the rest of the world. People call me from overseas and say, Bobby, is Australia that racist? How come are they sending refugees, on some remote island or what have you? The money that is being used, the money can be spent right here. The refugee can be given a second chance, just like I was given a second chance to reintegrate into civil society and start to contribute to this great country. Refugees from all across the world, not just refugees, but migrants, make up this country. We cannot discount that. We got to start to change our tough stand against this. It's a wonderful program, and I think it can even be increased to 20 to 25,000 intake from refugee background, and Australia have got a capacity to deal with it.
I just want to know emotional and psychological aspect of refugees. Is there any services to access just to help refugees deal with the traumatic or the tragic experience?
I work in the community settlement service, and there are services provided. And a refugee will not pay a cent to access those services. They are there free of charge for the refugee. We've got trauma services like QPAST. We've got, relationship counseling, services. And we got the Multicultural Development Association that provide community development, services. Local government across this country are all doing great work to settle refugees. The communities in the neighborhoods, there are people, the churches, the religious community, they all come to the aid of refugees. It is not what people see on the media.
Is there any counseling services when you enter the country?
Yeah, there are counseling. I just named one. QPAS is a counseling service. Okay. So everything are there available for refugees. But I can tell you something, just to add to that. People try to use that against refugees and say, they are coming to take our jobs, they are coming, and they live on sponge on the welfare system. That is misleading as well. A refugee come here after 2-3 months. They realize that the welfare money that they are receiving, full $500 a fortnight, is not enough to take care of their burden. They have got people family back home. They have got, dreams. If you ask me what do these people really want, I would say they want life, a quality of life like any other Australian, out there, you know. They want to be given a fair go. They want to be given an opportunity to contribute. And these people realize that the full $500 they are receiving a fortnight cannot, you know, sustain themselves here in the first place, you know, to stay afloat. They really at the bottom right of the economic ladder by living on the welfare system. So they found a job. They put everything aside and they found a job.
That brings me to my next question. Yeah. So what is your view about some African families putting more resources on material things like cars, bills, celebrations, and at the expense of, I would say, at the expense of their children's education and well-being? What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I mean,
because you see it, yeah. I see it. We both know that is what happened, you know, in the community, you know, to be who they are not, as we were talking about before. What is your view, your opinion about that?
I think, look, it's a new country, a new, you know, suite of opportunities and great, you know, people. Refugees have come here. They felt that they have wasted 10, 15 years of their life, you know, languaging in refugee camps. So they have come here and they are exposed to all of these things. And once you have got a clean record, you can go and get it. So they want to really get back and regain that, you know, status in life. So that urge is also there to get yourself a nice car, you know, get yourself loan and organize big parties and weddings, all of that. But what we say to our people in the community is, it is not an event. You know, your settlement here is a journey. Take your time. You don't have to go for all of these things at once. It will create burden, you know. Understand your environment. Understand the law. Do not get, you know, into problems around here with the police, you know. We try to send all these messages across, and some of them are picking up the message. I think, yes, sometimes, you know, it makes me feel uncomfortable. People try to show off in a way that, you know, they can really compensate for the jobs they are doing, stay very, you know, stay a difficult challenge for a lot of them, but they still want to be out there and showing up. And I also understand, given my own experience coming from that background, it's about, oh, I've spent 15 years in a refugee camp. I got this opportunity to get a decent car. I'm going for a $30,000 car, and you are in debt for the next 7 years. But we say, look, take your time. It's not an event, it's a journey. You will get there. You don't have to compete with anybody. Take your education seriously. Those are things that we tell people.
So, Ellen, let's talk about the president, the first female president in Africa, I think.
Yeah, first democratically elected female
president.
Let's
talk about her, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Yeah. Give a brief introduction about this great woman. Who is she?
Exactly. I really like the way you put it. This great woman. And in fact, she wrote a book, This Child Will Be Great. She's a great woman in every, you know, sense of the word. She's a great woman. In fact, growing up, I look up to now President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf as one of those role models, you know, in our country. You know, she really broke the glass ceiling for women in Liberia and Africa as a whole. And she came with the hope. I was very hopeful that for the first time, you know, we have got a well-educated, well-connected, internationally, very experienced president, a grandmother, you know, to come and take the helm of power and lead the country out of, you know, but it's sometimes a woman sent to power, you have to do two things. You take the country in the direction you have always dreamed of, and Eddie has always had a dream that I would take this country, I would make my country great, you know, or you get compromised. And I think she's right at that junction where it's more of being compromised than taking the country where she really had a dream of taking it. She got really caught up with a lot of people that she felt indebted to, and those are people that have corrupted the system. Liberia is one of the most corrupt countries now as we speak, the 4th or 5th corrupt country in Africa. Liberia is the 4th or 5th poorest country in Africa. Women's rights are still very, you know, so look, 10 years in power, if I were to grade my president, I would say She has done great internationally by bringing the country back into the international, into the community of nations. She has done great when it comes to keeping the peace, and others will argue that she was involved in destabilizing the country, but at least she's there and the country is peaceful. So we'll give her the credit for these things. But poverty, you know, look, the worst form of violence is poverty. And the guns may be silenced for now in Liberia, but poverty is really, you know, eating up the people. And with corruption, that's such a high level of corruption existing in the country, you expect the people to be angry and get up, and you know. But Liberians are fed up with violence. They are fed up with war. Yeah. Then they will never go back to war. And
Bobby, you had opportunity to come to Australia. So what are you doing for your people back home?
That's a wonderful question, Queer, and that's why I have really increased my time in serving. I went back 2013 on a feasibility study to just look at things, and I saw a huge gap in the community, the needs, you know. And I have come back, designed a lot of community development programs. So I'm in the process of going back anytime soon on a pro bono basis. I'm going to leave work here. I'm going to, you know, leave my family here, go back to Liberia, sit there for 3 to 6 months, and deliver what I call a multifaceted, you know, community development project to empower the communities, to actually give back to the country that I love so dearly, you know, and stand there, work with the mothers in the markets, you know, work with our fathers on the farms, you know, work with the youth in those slums areas, you know. I'm not going to lay back in a 5-star hotel in Liberia. I just want to be physically present with the people and say, look, you don't have to depend on government for all of your needs. There are some that you can take control of, and I'm here to help you to facilitate that process to make these things happen. And every individual, we've all got agency, you know, and if we put it to use, we can meet our full potential. And I know with this project, an Australian have been very wonderful in contributing, loading up a 40-foot container to take with me and initiate this project. Look, it's just wonderful. But in Australia, we have used our position here to lobby and advocate on behalf of Liberia. Like the question you asked, what have you done or what are you doing? I remember a couple of years ago, the Australian government invited me to serve as a witness at the federal parliamentary inquiry. And my advice to the inquiry was to provide scholarship for Liberian and African students to come, and that was, you know, taken into consideration. And more Liberian students came on scholarship to Australia. That was wonderful. And I'm in my new role at South Bend TIFF. I'm also, you know, exploring the opportunity of extending English language program to Guineans to come here and learn English. I know some Guineans go to Ghana, your country, and other parts of Africa to learn English. But if I live in Guinea as a refugee and all that journey, I want to give back to Guinea too. And my wife is from Guinea, so I want to be there.
Thank you very much for coming to the show. But, you know, you take this opportunity, use this platform to advise our people with just a few minutes, just to advise your people.
Oh, thank you, Quia, and it's been wonderful. You see, I want to say thanks to the camera crew as well for this, you know, great job. Having a platform to tell our story is very empowering. Some people say the world is made of atom. I think the world is made of story. It is through storytelling you are able to, you know, bring out the best and the good in people. So we are not just here to show ourselves up. I think this is a platform I want to invite other potential African leaders in the community to touch base with Equia on the A to A talk show and just make the most of it, tell our story in a positive way. But to all of my community members, Liberians, you know, as past president of the Federation, I say, you are a vibrant community, you are a very decent community, you are a very hardworking, very talented community. To all of the Africans across Queensland, I serve as your past leader. And I tell you, we've got one of the best going on here. We've got one of the best communities in the country. And please don't lose hope. We've got the services are ready. Our leaders in the community, you know, the councils, the state governments, and all of the service providing organizations and the neighborhood, you know, we are all ready to make sure that the African settlement story in Australia is a success story. So you got to embrace this opportunity and make the most of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming to the show. I really appreciate your presence. So Are you ready for the hot seat question?
Oh, the hot seat question. I've already been sitting here at the edge of my seat. That's usually the hot seat question is coming.
Are you ready for the hot seat question?
I'm ready for the hot seat.
Okay. So your question is, do you think Centrelink support, like there should be a cutoff point to Centrelink support, or it should be ongoing?
Nah, there shouldn't be any cutoff point to Centrelink support. Centrelink support should be ongoing. Let us face it. Australia is a first world country. It's one of the richest countries on the face of the earth. Not that we cannot afford it, and not because others will misuse their Centrelink money, so we should punish, the rest of the people.
Let me be very specific. I'm talking about the unemployment support.
Yeah, the unemployment support. I mean, like I said, you can cut it up. It is not because others are lazy. I mean, not lazy, sorry, but others are facing some challenges. So you just use some executive decision to say, look, it is not hurting anybody. It is working perfectly. If we cut off support because we sense that there are people who just want to take a ride, have it easy, we're going to be putting our support elsewhere. It's not money that's going to go into saving.
To me, it's more of getting people, to go to the workforce.
Yeah, but if I know exactly what the question is, but I'm also trying to give you other dimensions to that question. Because if you cut off the support and this guy does not have means to live, he's going to go and rob. So you're going to put in more resources. That support that you have cut off, you're going to be giving it to the police. You're going to be employing more police to be on the beat. Because those people affected, some will go into drugs, some will go into prostitution, some will go into robbery. You see what I'm talking about? So it has that ripple effect. So we cannot cut off the support. But what we can do is to bring about, some sensitization, awareness in the workplace, both employers and employees. There are those employers out there desperately looking for employees, and there are those, unemployed out there desperately looking for employees.
Question. Now there's a humor question. This one is just for laugh. Okay, this one just for laugh. If your mom, let's say your mom and your wife, they are drowning, which one would you save?
That's a age-old Liberian question.
Who are you going to save, your mom or your wife?
I'll take my wife.
Your wife is watching. Your mom is also watching.
My mom is not watching. I will take my wife.
Where is your mom?
My mom is not watching.
Where is your mom?
I will take my wife.
Where is your mom?
She's not going to watch me.
If your mom is not alive, your sister and your wife. So
my sister and my wife. So I will take my wife. You don't put me in problem with my wife now. You're okay. My sister is watching, but you know what? No, it's terrible. It's difficult. I can see my sister drown, or my mom drown, or my wife drown. Are we dreaming about it, or we just woke up from sleep if we were dreaming? I don't need to take anybody. I just wake everybody up.
You are in trouble tonight.
Yeah. But honestly, I think I take my wife. Yeah, I take my wife.
Thank you very much for coming to the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming to the show, Bobby.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Oh my God. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Bob Whitfield.